Hey scholars, welcome to section 4-4 of chapter 4, looking at how does speciation, extinction, and human activities affect biodiversity. So we're taking a look at how all three of those things, or well, two of those things affect, well, three of those things affect biodiversity. So how do new species evolve and change over time? So there's a couple of different ways, and the book talks about specifically two. One of them is geographic isolation. And that's where different groups of the same population of a species become physically isolated from one another for a long period of time. For example, we talk about this about biology, that let's say a squirrel species is divided by a big flood in a river that kind of clogs a valley, and those two squirrel species are separated. Well, over time, those species have become so different genetically that they would no longer be able to reproduce. That's one way of having new species kind of separating from the two is called geographic isolation. Another one is called reproductive isolation, and most reproductive isolation stems from because of geographic isolation. It's basically where a mutation or a change by natural selection operates independently in a gene pool of geographically isolated populations. Basically meaning that one of those mutants is just a couple of those mutants are so weird as far as mutation-wise that they really can't interbreed with others, but they can interbreed with themselves, and therefore that leads to a new species as well. So those are our two major types: geographic isolation and reproductive isolation. This is one example of geographic isolation. Now the book gives you the Arctic fox and the gray fox, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about the gray fox and the red fox, which I'm more familiar with. I've never seen an Arctic fox because it's so far in the north, but I have seen a red fox. So what happened with this is, let's use that as an example. With early fox population, which you see here, they're spread throughout the northwest, or the northern area of the United States and North America, as well as the south area. But they eventually spread from two different spots. And actually, the red fox would be more in this region, and the gray fox is kind of a variation. So what happens is they become separated, and most of the red fox are up here in the northeast area of the United States, and the gray fox is more in the south. I know we have gray fox in the northeast, but they really get out-competed because of the red fox. And one of the major reasons is because of the fall foliage. Gray foxes don't really blend in so well with bright colors. They still stand out a little bit. But down here in North Carolina, where you don't have as much change as far as, at least on the East Coast, as much change in leaf change and color change, you don't have that real good blending of the colors for the gray fox. That allows the gray fox to thrive. And the reason why is because most of the conditions there are sandy and more brown instead of nice bright colors. But the red fox, on the other hand, blends in very well with the fall foliage of the upper northeast of the United States. So we tend to see a lot more red fox up in the northeast and more gray fox down in the southeast. So that just kind of goes along with some of the different, just with coat color anyway, leading to geographic isolation. So extinction. Extinction is forever. That is true. There's no coming back from extinction in any way, shape, or form. When you're extinct, you're gone. Total annihilation of the species. So that's what extinction really boils down to. Now, we have these things called endemic species, and endemic species are very, very vulnerable to extinction because of where they're located. They're only located in a very few select specific areas, and they have to have really, really specific ecosystems for them to thrive. An example is the golden toad, and you'll see a picture of it here. The golden toad of Costa Rica, extinct because it needed a very, very specific temperature, moisture content, climate for the area that it inhabited. And when they took those forests down in Costa Rica due to deforestation, as went the golden toad. So that is one of our major stories. Looking at endemic means very vulnerable to extinction because it only is found in one area. Extinction can affect one species or many species at one time. We call this background extinction. Background extinction is basically slow, normal extinction. It takes a long time because of the fact that environment takes a long time to change. Sometimes there's some changes, and some species eventually get kind of worn out by the change, and they can no longer survive, and other ones come in and outcompete them. And so that's what we call background extinction, kind of a normal rate of extinction. Mass extinction, on the other hand, is where a large number of species get annihilated, usually because of catastrophic events. Now, science thinks that about 3 to 5 catastrophic events has happened, in the Earth's history that has caused major mass extinction. The dinosaurs being one of those. So that is just one example of a mass extinction. One of the science focus talks about we have two ways to change genes and genetics of populations. And we can do that ourselves. One of those is called artificial selection, where to change genetic characteristics of populations with very similar genes. Another way is genetic engineering, which probably most of you are familiar with, called gene splicing, actually taking genes from other organisms and inserting in other organisms, calling them transgenic organisms. When we do this, though, it is very controversial because we don't know the long-term effects. Is there ethics involved? Are we playing God in science by changing these things? That boils down to well, should we be doing and playing with this kind of technology and science? There's privacy issues, knowing about genetics. Genetics, that could be one major scary thing, is that if everyone knew about everyone's genetics and had access to your, a human genome bank of all the people, that could be very dangerous as far as privacy goes. And also there's just other be harmful effects that we don't even know about yet. That is kind of a scary thought. But those are some of the things there. And this is just showing you a genetically engineered mouse, one that is much larger in size than the other one on the left, just kind of showing you the difference in those. That about wraps up our section on 4.4. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. We'll catch you for 4.5.